Energized show, up the Irish.
Okay, what's going on, guys? And welcome to a brand new episode of Energized. Ross, introduce the guest, man.
Yet again, we have two of Ireland's finest MMA media members. We have the man in Stockholm, Mr. Phil O'Connor, and the one and only Niall McGrath. Lads, how are we doing?
God, I can only speak for myself here, but if I was any better, I couldn't stand it. How are you, Niall?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I think everyone's in Ireland's a little bit of a smile on their face after last night. So
Yeah, definitely. Imagine doing this after an England win. No offense to the English, and no offense.
Yeah, no, all offense to them. All offense to them. That
All
would,
offense.
as Barry Glendenning said on the Guardian Football Podcast, that would have been one of the top 10 worst things in my life if they'd have won last night. But I actually worked on that tournament as well, lads. And the very last article I wrote was about the English FA's statement condemning the racism that the likes of Sancho and Rashford and that so forth. And it was a really sad way to end the thing, So
definitely.
Hopefully we'll have more positive things coming out of that. But having said that, there has been a great week of sport just behind us, and there's even more now with the Olympics starting next week. So we live in hope.
Yeah, actually, what's called any hopefuls over in Tokyo for us there, Phil?
Do you know what? This is literally the first day that I've sat down with it. So today I booked 2 COVID tests, one for Wednesday, one for Saturday, and I'm flying out there on Monday. And as of right now, Ross, I have done zero research, right? Absolutely nothing. I did some preview stuff, but I literally haven't looked at any of the Irish, any of the Scandinavians, anything. So that'll be it now for the rest of the week. The rest of you guys, Niall will be back on the sunbed now, drinking pints in the various different terraces of Dublin. I'll be working hard doing my research the next few days before flying out. So, sometime maybe I might drop into the podcast sometime during the Olympics when I've caught up on all these guys and girls.
Yeah, I think Reece McClenaghan, who does the pommel horse, which is sort of like a random event, is supposed to be very good. So maybe look out for him.
Yeah, look out.
Yeah, I used to be in that sport, but I couldn't afford to keep it because I couldn't afford to feed it. So.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Baz, any hot takes on that match last night? No.
The penalties.
Yeah.
I think
First of all, we'll talk about it for 2 minutes just because it's one of the most relevant things of the weekend. Part of the MMA. But what did you make of Saka taking a penalty and Sterling and Grealish not being selected to hit a penalty? That was very strange, I thought.
Yeah, especially coming off the 2 misses, like the fifth one's most important. Saka's only 19. It was a bad decision. It was just a bad decision. And he may have said he wants to take it, but he may have been like, if I don't say I want to take this, next time around he won't pick me, So
it wasn't just a bad decision. I think it was the worst decision I've ever made. I've ever seen made by a coach in a final, right? If you sit there looking at it, the last 3 penalty takers for England were 23, 21 and 19. All 3 of them substitutes, all 3 of them young black men who hadn't played. 2 of them had only come on at like the 127th, 128th minute. Sancho in particular, I've spoken to people at Borussia Dortmund at the beginning of the tournament, and they're going, it's actually like Gareth Southgate has never seen this young fella play football because he would solve all the problems of that England team. And then to call on them at the end of the final to take penalties. And, Saka, I think it's like, to be honest, Southgate is a great man, right? And he's a great coach to a certain level, but he's appallingly, I called him a coward, and he's appallingly scared to do the right thing, and he got caught out last night. And the unfortunate thing is, and he was very, humble about it. He said, that's on me. But the problem is the genie's out of the bottle. And now those 3 lads are getting abused, and they were getting abused minutes after the whole thing, their Facebook and their Instagram and that kind of thing. And to me, it's really, really sad just because he's so innately sort of, cautious or conservative, because, that game was there for the winning by England. But, you live in hope that these lads will bounce back. What does the Manchester United fan? He's going to stick up for Sancho and Rashford now, aren't you?
Well, actually, Niall, I just want to ask you on Sancho and Rashford. Do you think if they were meant to hit a penalty, should they have come on with maybe 10 minutes to go to actually let them have a bit of a run around? Like, that was basically their first kick of the ball.
Definitely, and that's what's really frustrated me throughout this tournament with, as Phil was saying there about Gareth Southgate. Like, he's so many good players sitting on that bench. I think England, if you look at them and you look at the squad, they can actually be so much better than they are if Gareth Southgate, as Phil said, had a bit of balls, went with Grealish, maybe gave Sancho a bit more time on the pitch. I think he started the semi-final against Denmark. That was it. Came off the bench. Yeah, you have to be on. You have to get into the game before you're coming on to take a penalty. And as he said, the young lads, like, that could ruin Saka's career. People are going to look back now, and if England don't win something in the near future, which I can't really see them winning in 4 years' time either. So people are going to look back at this young lad and go, that's the guy that missed the penalty in the European final, and he's only 19, and he could be remembered for that for the rest of his career.
And Basmo, one last question for you. Does Southgate get a new contract? Because that's the talk of the town.
He will, yeah.
At Middlesbrough.
No, he'll get another one. I mean, it's just He's a yes man. He's basically the English Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. That's what it looks like right now, anyway. But lads, obviously, people here after getting that great analysis, let us know what you thought of the European final there. But we're going to get into it. UFC 264 over the weekend. There's a lot to talk about. We've decided, we've decided as a team here that we're gonna talk about the build up, then the press conference, then the fight, because we don't want to leave anything out. So we're gonna start with yourself, Phil. In the build up to the fight, Conor was very, very quiet. He only did a couple of interviews, and especially the Stephen A. Smith one rubbed him up the wrong way. But what did you make of the silence from the whole entire team in the build up to the fight?
Yeah, it was kind of expected because that's what Conor does off the back of a loss. It was the same thing in Diaz too. You know, it's like, okay, let's keep this as quiet as possible. Let's get back to basics. And, you know, for years now, you know, you guys have heard me be critical of the UFC. I think they've no idea what they're doing. I don't think they know how to run a business. They know how to keep the fans that they already have happy, but they just have no idea how to reach the casual sports fan. You know, if they did, you know, Conor wouldn't be worth 300 million. He'd be worth 3 billion, you know, but they just can't manage that. And remember, like, normally I will send them an interview or I'll talk to somebody at the UFC and say, look, I work for one of the biggest news agencies in the world. They have 1 billion readers every day and they still never give me an interview, but they always reply. And this time around, they didn't even reply. And I went, okay, Conor's obviously told him he's not doing anything. And there was some signs all week, lads, that he was playing his own game, right? One was at the weigh-ins when he came out in a football jersey with the Black Forge pub on it, right? He wasn't wearing any of this crypto.com bullshit, right? He wasn't wearing any fucking Venom kit or that kind of thing. He was wearing his own stuff. And that, to me, was a sign that he was going playing his own game. I know he did an interview with Ariel Helwani, but that was because it was Ariel and it was BT Sport. So that was for a broadcaster. So with all these things, the Euros we just mentioned with the UFC, they have a certain amount of obligations that you absolutely have to do, and a press conference you have to do. But if we go back to the Diaz fights, Conor was so tired of doing all the media because they put him out there. They whipped him, you know what I mean? He talked about Floyd Mayweather, dance for me, boy. And Conor at that stage was just, no more dancing now, you know? So in that way, I think he did the right thing. I do think that they failed to sort of whip up anything. But I mean, what was really disappointing to me, lads, was the press conference and how he behaved, because I didn't think he was funny. I didn't think that, you know, he came across as credible. I thought when I saw him being interviewed by Oscar Willis, the lovely Oscar Willis on the MacLife.com, he looked very agitated. He was moving around a lot. He looked very tense. And that to me wasn't a good look. Now, we always have the benefit of hindsight here, where we're trying to interpret what happened in the octagon and say, oh, were there any signs of this beforehand, right? And you can never really link the two, because once the cage door closes, it's hard to know. But I wasn't all that impressed. It just struck me, you know, and I mean, I wrote about this over the weekend. It struck me as Conor's becoming this kind of like Elvis Presley was in Las Vegas, that, you know, we're living on the old hits here, but there's nothing new there at all. So, you know, it was a little bit disappointing. I enjoyed new Conor, happy Conor in Abu Dhabi when his family was there. And that's solely because that, you know, at the end of the day, all I want to see is that bloke happy and his money made and him able to deal with whatever it is that burns him up inside. And I've said this for years, you know, and I didn't feel that that was the thing. I didn't feel that that's where he was in this week. And that's never good coming into a fight. Yeah.
Noel, I have a question for you. And Ross, I have one especially for you as well. Noel, like, obviously, as we just pointed there, Conor didn't do much media. Did it feel like at the press conference, it almost felt like he had to like fit everything in that he hadn't done in the build up for it? And also, it was the first time he was disrespected by his opponent and sort of kept his mouth shut when Poirier says, I thought you were better. That remember Conor says, your wife is your husband.
No, I agree. I think I agree with everything Phil said there. I think Everton was forced. I think like the whole camp, really, to be honest, him going over to California, trying to starve himself, you know, trying to get that far, trying to get that hunger back in the belly. And, you know, as much time has been said all week, you know, it's that money. You know, he's in a precarious position in a fight. He's getting choked dead. At the back of his mind, subconsciously, he's going to think, you know, I've 400 million in the bank at the end of the day. But that's the reality of the situation. You know, your hunger definitely goes. But yeah, I agree with you with the press conference. You know, I thought it was a number of times Dustin fired off at him and he hesitated, picked up the mic and put it back down. I just don't think he's that confidence anymore, that belief. The X factor is gone as far as I'm concerned. I don't think anyone sort of fears him anymore. And I believe we saw that on Saturday night, you know, in the fight as well. Like Dustin, you know, walked him down, walked forward. He took a couple of shots, had a couple of his best shots in the second fight, and that gave him big confidence going in. So, yeah, listen, I don't know where he goes from here, but yeah, the whole week just seemed really forced and laboured, Conor McGregor, and he looked very, very tense all week, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ross, here we go, right? You mentioned to me in like during the week at the media press conference, what has happened over the last few years with the media people that are asking the questions? Now, like, I mean, I've seen you, Noel, I've definitely seen you do a show about it, But like then Ross brought it up there during the week, and like I have to agree, like the credibility of some of these people, and no offense, I love the UFC, I love some of the people that are asking the questions. It's just sort of like, it's almost like fans asking rather than like, obviously back in the day we had the Ariels, we had the Luke Thomases, you know what I mean, getting really in and asking the really good shit rather than the schmo dressing like the way he does. And we love Robbie Barstool, but like, I mean, and he's in a brilliant situation. And then Chad Ochocinco is literally just like, he doesn't know what's going on, and they're being so biased. Ross, what you make of the way the MMA media is sort of like, well, what's changed?
Well, you sort of answered the question by the time you've actually got to answer.
It's because you hang around too much, man.
Yeah, but look, I thought the level of journalism, and like, I don't see, the thing is, I look at you two guys, Niall and Phil, and I see you guys as journalists. I see us as more sort of media guys. We don't write. I think when someone, you know, puts a pen to paper, I think I have a newfound respect for those type of people, and I'm like those guys are the real deal. We more give our opinion on video. It's sort of more of a, well, you guys do the same, but like I see us as like sort of newer age media. I'm terrible at writing stuff. You wouldn't be able to read my handwriting. Now I know you type it, but just saying anyway.
Terrible writing.
But yeah, I was just looking at going. I actually didn't stay up for the press conference. I rang Barry the next morning after watching it, and I just went, that was an absolute shit show of a press conference. I go, it was terrible. All the questions were the same. You know, yeah, Chad Ochocinco doing plugs for Bleacher Report mid-question, and then like saying that you think one fighter is going to beat another fighter as a journalist in the middle of a press conference is the height of unprofessionalism.
Yeah.
Pink jacket guy insulting one of the fighters, irrelevant which one was, in the middle of his press conference. Like, these guys are here to get on social media and get a following by asking these stupid questions. It is embarrassing, and it's actually embarrassing that the UFC give these guys the credentials to ask the questions. Again, like the schmo with the glasses, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how people haven't seen through his shtick. And like, fair play to him. I go, fair play to schmo. He's doing his shtick. He's doing well off it. But at the end of the day, he's there and it's all about him all the time. It couldn't be any more clear. And the only reason I have respect for Robbie from Barstool Sports is because he'll admit it. He goes, I'm just a super fan of this sort of stuff, and I've been put in this position, and I'm taking the opportunities I've got. And I'll agree with also the build to the fight. Like, he had 4 cherry-picked interviews. You know, I actually thought the best one was actually with Megan O'Leary, but that was obviously with the UFC. Stephen A. Smith, he obviously had to do something for ESPN. I actually thought Stephen A. Smith did a better job than I expected going into for the interview.
Agreed.
But at the end of the day, like, you're almost waiting for Stephen A. Smith to trip himself up at some stage, because he doesn't know the full shebang, really.
Do you do the UFC?
Yeah, it's like, do you do UFC, bro? Then obviously Oscar, like, Conor owns the Mac Life, so like he has to do something on there. And then obviously Ariel, because I think he's done an interview with Ariel before every UFC fight. So like, you know, Ariel has everyone in their back pocket for an interview at some stage, and that's just the way it goes down. And he also knows that none of them are going to ask him a real hard question. Maybe bar Stephen A. Smith. I think no one really dug in at him, and I thought we could have done with seeing more. I also believe that you can actually tell with like the countdown and stuff and the embedded, you can almost tell that Conor was like cherry picking the footage that was used for as well. He seems to have an in there as well. I thought it was very strange that, like, he said he was going away from everyone, and then like people got the cameras out when he was on his bicycle, and he was like cycling up and down. It was like, and it was almost like a performance in itself. And then, as Phil said, when he walked out to weigh-ins wearing the black Forge in jersey, I'm sure the Umbro lads were delighted with that. But I think Dana White had a quick word with him. He took it off quick enough, but it just goes to show that he is different to everyone else. He does obviously bring the numbers. He does get a lot of leniency, but I don't know. It makes it different. And I think this is the first time for a Conor McGregor fight I didn't enjoy the build-up whatsoever. And I was saying to Barry the whole time ago, the press conference, didn't think it was great. The interviews, I thought they were all the same, really, give or take 1 or 2 questions. And, you know, he was sort of given the same sound bites time and time again. I thought there was no new material, one might say.
Yeah. The one thing about the UFC, lads, and we have to keep this in mind the whole time, the UFC hates journalism. Right? It doesn't want journalism. If it comes down to a choice between me or Niall or Robbie Barstool, Robbie's going to get the credential. Right? And I love that kid. I sat beside him in Abu Dhabi. I've any amount of time for him. You know, any day, any other day or night, he can call me. Right? But that's what they want. They want the fan perspective. They want that. They love the schmo and the character that he plays. Another good guy off the screen and when he's not doing his thing, right? But that's what they want, right? They want social media hits. They want traction. They don't want hard questions.
Yeah.
They don't even want adult conversations. What they want is something that is preferably 59 seconds and perfect for TikTok or for an Instagram story, right? That's what they want. They don't want questions about, I mean, I remember back at the Diaz one fight, I had a conversation with John Kavanagh that almost turned into an argument because John assumed that I had no idea what was talking about this. What I was talking about, despite the fact I've been covering sports for 20 years. And I was trying to have a conversation with John about the gas tank, right? And I was saying that mixed martial arts is different to a lot of other sports, including boxing, right? Because it requires a very large gas tank, but it's also, it's an endurance sport, but at the same time, it has to be explosive. And my question that I was asking was, how do you combine those two? So it's like trying to do a triathlon on 100 meters and then a triathlon on 100 meters. That's literally what you're doing. And John was going, you people have no idea. I was going, no, I do. This is why I'm asking you the fucking question. And the following night, Conor went out there and gassed out. The UFC hates when you do that. They don't want that conversation. They want, is fighter A going to beat fighter B? Or did he call somebody's wife's a hoe? That's what they want because that's what gets their time. And if you look at the clip of Conor sitting with his back to the fence now today, that I'm sure that came from a UFC camera where he's saying, I'm going to get you in your sleep to Dustin, right? This is not an accident that this is out online today, lads, because that's what they do. But that's not journalism. That's content. That's, whether it be fan created by Robbie Barstool or whatever. And they've no interest in it. They don't want it. And they keep journalists as far away as possible from it, which is a shame because I think that it's very, very hard for the casual sports fan who might get into UFC or might get into MMA, but they can't because they've no objective, they've no objective frame of reference to put this in because there's nobody objective left to cover it.
Yeah. What happens there, when I add what Phil was saying there, lads, as well, what happens then, there's a knock-on effect to the fighters that they don't understand what a journalist's role is. And, as Phil and myself talked about it before, like journalism is the process of verification. And these guys don't get it at times. And then you put out a story. I've had this happen to me before where we've had a fighter on a podcast, an article's been written about this, about this, Phil. And then he confronts me at an event saying, why did you put that out? And I said, well, you said this on record, on record audio interview for a podcast, and now you're getting offended at me. The UFC, what they need to do is, and I've been calling this for a long time, I think it's spoke to Paul Felder about it recently, they have a big PI out there. Why don't they do a media training center? Because they don't want it, as Phil said. They don't want that. They just want the hits. They want the likes. And we saw it even happen on Saturday night. Them shoving a microphone in Conor McGregor's face when his foot's half hanging off. Absolutely disgraceful. And the reason why they did that is because they're getting a line, they're getting a story, they're getting a narrative for clicks. And
again, like even the post-fight press conference, you had Dustin Poirier giving out to Chad Ochocinco because he bet money against him. You know what I mean? Like this is the crazy stuff that we're dealing with. And the amount of times I've heard Luke Thomas say that X fighter or Y fighter won't talk to him anymore because he picked against him in a fight. And that's the reason why Ariel Helwani doesn't pick fights anymore, because therefore he doesn't want to upset anyone. These guys get very emotional about stuff that has been said. And when you're in a two-person fight, when someone picks the winner, you only have one or two options. You know what I mean? So it's I'm surprised they get so upset. If anything, if I was in a fight and someone picked against me and I won, I'd probably be slightly smug about it and then not be annoyed at the person because I won. I wouldn't care as long as I won.
Yeah, what do I want people to do? Not even bet. I mean, that's what makes it more interesting. I mean, when you pick someone, you're invested,
But this is the thing, lads, right? The Mixed Martial Arts Journalists Association was started a few years ago when I think it was when Ariel had his credential pulled for UFC 200. No, he said that Brock Lesnar was going to be
199.
Yeah, so it's 199. He was pulled, and we said, okay, we have to have some sort of a thing there. Now, I don't work full time with MMA, but I do a lot of it. And I don't know, Niall, if you ever joined. I know Pete definitely didn't join yet, but I was there from the very beginning, and I just paid my dues again for another year. Yeah. But one of the things that they say is don't bet on fights that you cover, right? So this is a sort of a moral idea or an ethical idea that we have, is that we don't bet on fights that we don't cover, so that we can be objective about what happens there. And then you have Chad Ochocinco coming out Again, really nice guy. You know, great to have him in the fight. I was going, I bet on the other guy. It's like, what the fuck is this? And it's so hard then, because what happens is that we all get tarred with the same brush, right? Like the audience doesn't know the difference between Niall McGrath, Philip O'Connor, and Robbie Barstool. And again, love the kid, but when they don't know that, they think, oh, you know, you all just want to be friends with Conor. I don't care. You know, that's not my job. Is not to be friends with Conor. My job is to call it as I see it, to say what it is I see happen in the octagon and in, you know, what happens around the game. And it makes it so difficult. And the unfortunate thing is that this is MMA. This is a tiny, insignificant part of our lives, right? This is just something that gives us great joy to watch and to write and to talk about, right? But when you take that attitude into politics and you take that attitude into fucking important things like voting, then it makes it easier to say, oh, they're all bought, or they're all just shills, or he's a Donald Trump fan, or he's a Bernie Sanders fan, or whatever. And that is seriously damaging to society, because we're teaching people that journalism is something that it's not. As Niall says, it's a process of verification. This is not a fucking art, lads. This is a trade, and it's a very, very important trade, and that's why the UFC needs it. But more importantly, every country in the world needs it.
Well, that's what we thought. Used to boys coming on would be a great idea for this as well, because we felt strongly about it as well. Well, look, I want to get into the fight. I'm sure people are here. They want to check it out. Obviously, in the build up, all the superstars are out, like Justin Bieber, the Kardashians, the Nelk boys. Someone else give a shout out. Machine Gun Kelly.
Browns.
Cleveland Browns.
What's your woman's name? Machine Gun Kelly, and is it Megan Fox?
No, who was your favorite celebrity there?
Justin Bieber, big Bieber fan.
What about you, Phil?
It's the hair. It's
the songs, man. It's the songs.
Your man from Blink 182 tried to stick his tongue down the Kardashian's throat at one point. I was going, okay, shoot your shot, pal. Shoot your shot.
He's just claiming his territory, Phil. You know how it is.
It was that Travis
exactly
Barker.
Travis Barker, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so that's just going into it. Like, obviously, myself and Ross, Ross was obviously into the UFC before me, and obviously when Conor came on, it just brought a whole new wave of fans. And then being at that UFC Dublin event, I was absolutely hooked. In the build up to it, like, as much as like I mean, we're fans of Conor, like, you can never go against the Irish. Our whole platform is built on being Irish. You know what I mean? We're never ever going to go against Conor. Going into it, I was like, as it got closer and closer, I was like, oh shit, like, I'm like so nervous. First of all, I can't enjoy a Conor fight because I get so bleeding nervous. It's like when Katie Taylor fights. But when Conor came out, I was sort of like, right, if Conor can clean him out early, it'll be done. But if it goes on, Dustin Poirier will win. The result was the most craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, Ross, in the build up to it, like, just coming out in the cage, what way were you feeling?
To be honest, I think it's almost funnier to start back at the press conference, or even before the press conference, when Conor McGregor said, whoever shoots first is a bitch, right? And then Conor McGregor shot first. And then he was saying to Stephen A. Smith that submissions don't count, only knockouts count. And Conor McGregor goes for the guillotine. And then at the press conference, Conor McGregor tells Dustin Poirier he's going to leave on a stretcher. And then, ironically enough, Conor McGregor ended up leaving on a stretcher. It looks like karma sort of came back to get him, which, you know, which, look, you wouldn't wish that injury on anyone. It was an absolute horrific injury. Going into the fight, you know, I almost agree with the betting lines. I thought it was 50-50. I think Conor McGregor is one of the best fighters in UFC history for the first 7 minutes of every fight. And I think the 7-minute mark is where the turn sort of comes with McGregor. And I think, you know, he loses that pop in his shots. And, you know, that's when he changed up his game plan quite a lot. Look, watching the first round, I know a lot of judges gave it sort of a 10-8 to Poirier, and some gave it 10-9. I think if the ankle didn't roll and he didn't finish up on top for that last 15 seconds, I don't think it would have been a 10-8 across the board. I think it probably would have been 10-9 across the board. Look, the first round sort of was what it was. I don't think any of Poirier's ground and pound actually left too much of an impact on Conor. I think he actually caught him with a right hook at one stage and sort of wobbled him, and that's when Conor sort of went in for a shot. But look, who's to know how the second round would have went if Conor's foot didn't roll, and who's to know how those last 15 seconds would have went, because they were throwing serious leather at that stage of the fight. And you know what? It was quite high level mixed martial arts for the 4 minutes and 50 seconds before the ankle rolled. I think that's sort of my 2 cents on the fight. Weirdly enough, I know it's going to go down the record books as a win for Dustin Poirier. In my view, it's sort of a no contest, a la Chris Weidman, Uriah Hall, a la Weidman Silva as well. Yes, Dustin Poirier won the round, but like, it was by no means, the fight was not over, bar the ankle injury, in my opinion. Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, maybe? Phil, obviously Conor was being highly doubted for the first time since the Nate Diaz rematch. How are you feeling going into the fight?
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to people in Vegas. Now, Conor's team was very, very close. So I didn't even text most of the people that Niall and I would know there, because I knew from Abu Dhabi, that, it was going to be more and more closed this time around, But information still gets out, and, people still talk about things. And I kind of knew exactly what the game plan was. It was a Diaz 2 game plan going in there, is what I was told it was going to be, And that's exactly what it was. Conor started chopping away at the leg and that, And there had been rumors of this ankle injury that Conor had a scan and that kind of thing. But that was one of those things that you hear that ahead of every Conor fight. There's always a thing, I think, no, I can't remember who it was. It started a rumor that somebody had been injured. If it was Eddie Alvarez or somebody had been injured in the run up to the Madison Square Garden fight. So there's always one of those things. We all fucking panicked. I think it was on the Wednesday night or the Thursday night in New York. Everybody went, ah! But
Yeah,
I was
rumors
expecting
of a toe injury, I think it was.
Yeah, that's what it was. Like, and we were all fucking trying to find out. And of course, you can't, like, sometimes you can't believe anybody. Sometimes even camps put that out just to get people talking. But that was the game plan that I expected. Conor was much more on the front foot. He was a little bit cagier. His stance was completely different. It wasn't completely different, but it was much more or less of the boxing heavy stance with the weight on the front foot, and the two of them were going at it. I thought it was really interesting to begin with. I thought this thing of, trying to gauge the distance. Conor came very, very close with a left hand at one point that just whizzed by Dustin's chin. And if that had landed, that was a different fight. But to see Conor jump on that guillotine was interesting to see. To see him hold it for that long was kind of,
rumor has it, Phil, that he was listening to Andrew McGrath on the podcast last week about the submission.
You knew the black belt was coming.
Yeah, exactly. I think McGann was trying to get his black belt rather than Conor get his, So, but it was interesting to see that he went on that. But the problem with guillotines is always if it doesn't come off, you're on the bottom, and you're often on the bottom in a position where there's one shoulder sort of leaning into your chest, and it's not a comfortable position to be in grappling there. And by the time you let it go, I think the Gracie brothers have just released this 32 principles of jiu-jitsu, and they would say that every technique has a time frame, right? So you can only do certain things for a certain amount of seconds. It's not going to work. If you haven't got that armbar within 5 seconds, you're not getting that armbar. You've got to go for a triangle. You've got to go for something else. And Conor was a little bit late giving that up, which meant he was left in a bad position. Also, Herb Dean missed it. Basically, Dustin had his toes caught in the cage as he tried to climb through and climb over out of the guillotine. It's one of those things you can either sit through, you can climb over. And Dustin was like, he had his toes in the cage, lifting himself up to get out, So that was a miss, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting fight, but there's always that thing if you wonder tactically, about the mistakes Conor made, if he wouldn't have been better off just trying to get up there. I don't know about the ground and pound, Ross. I think it was like some of those elbows and that kind of thing landed. And I think when you remember back to when Nate Diaz got the upper hand in the second fight there, that was the first time that Conor has been on the bottom and receiving blow. I got flashbacks to that, thinking, shit, this is problematic now, if this punch is getting through. And then Poirier said afterwards then that Conor was grabbing, he was putting 3 fingers in the gloves to pull him down and up kick. And that was ultimately why Poirier let him get back up to his feet. But, those elbows, even if they weren't getting 100% through, that's still a scary position to be in when you're not used to being on the bottom,
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say zero now, Phil. I wouldn't say zero, but like I don't think they were leading towards a TKO. Yeah, I think they almost looked as bad or looked worse than they were. Is more what I'm getting at. I don't think they were the finishing blows.
They're the kind of thing, though. Sorry to interrupt you. They're the kind of thing, though, that they encourage you to stretch out your body when you're on the bottom, right? So your intention is then to push as far away as possible with the legs. But as soon as you push away with the legs, then that leaves your legs are basically straight out, and somebody just pushes them down, and then they hop over into mount or a better position, right? And that's the danger of them. When you're landed like a heavy elbow there, that's the danger. And that's why I thought that, certain things you can practice. Like Conor's takedown defense is usually absolutely tremendous after the Khabib fight because they worked on it so much. But those kind of things, defending yourself from the bottom of that position, it's not something you often do. Sorry, Niall, I cut you off there.
No, I was just saying that, I think he's going to look back on the fight and look at that moment where he pulled guillotine and go, why did I do that? Because, as we've talked about, Conor's gas tank is a major issue. After 7 minutes, he's done. When you're on the ground, if you've got like Dustin Poirier on top, you're pulling guillotine, you're gassing out your arms. What he should have done there is, kept the fight in his feet, worked off the back foot, basically do what he was doing for the first 2 minutes of the round, and like he was slowing. He slowed in that round. Like the last minute or two, I think it was about the 2 minute mark where they went to the ground. The last minute and a half of that round, he looked tired. He looked very, very tired, and I think it was only going one way, to be honest. If that's hitting the second round, I think Dustin Poirier probably would have got the finish because I think Conor looked back at that and go, that was a mistake, a big mistake.
Yeah, I think especially when he grappled it takes even more. Like, just say if he starts at 100%, once he goes into grappling, like, it's like double the energy as it is from the striking. Because if McGregor was just doing a pure striking match, he's probably good for about 3 or 4 rounds. You know what I mean? But once you start putting in that grappling, it's like it starts sucking all his energy, and you can see it in him as well. So yeah, I definitely agree with that, Niall. Barry, do you want to give us your 2 cents?
I was absolutely heartbroken at 7 a.m. in the morning, being like, for fuck's sake, and England are going to win the Euros tomorrow. But well, technically that day. But no, when he went in, I just, as I said, I couldn't enjoy it. Like, and then when that happened, and then obviously the ankle thing, but then that was just the strangest thing ever, because it sorted nothing out. It was like at the end of the day, as much and I like Dustin as well. Like his whole career, he's just grinded it. He's been basically a smarter Nate Diaz, you can almost say. Just grinded it. Everyone who likes Conor also likes Nate Diaz. Also likes Dustin Poirier, bar the absolute nut huggers, as one would say. But no, after that loss, I mean, after that result, it just sorted nothing out. Obviously, it was so early over here in Ireland. It was just like,
it was www.anticlimax.com. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just can't leave like that. Like, lads, that's the thing now. Everyone wants to know now, where does anyone go from this situation? Ross, you may as well go first, bud.
Well, to me, like, I think Dustin Poirier is going to go off and fight Charles Oliveira for the title. I quite fancy Dustin Poirier to win that fight as well. Oliveira is obviously quite dangerous, but I just think, sure, size-wise, I think Poirier's got the advantage over him. I think he's a better boxer than him. I don't think Oliveira is a good enough wrestler. And if he's not going to be able to get a top position against Poirier, I don't see him getting a submission from the bottom. Poirier is quite wise to that. As for Conor McGregor...
No, stick on that. Give everyone a go to Poirier.
Okay.
Phil, what about yourself? Next for Poirier?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. You know, you have to think, like, you know, we talk about Conor's gas tank, right? But there's an emotional and a mental gas tank that is just brimming now for Dustin Poirier. He's gone back in there. You know, Conor took his soul with that first knockout back in 2014, right? And Dustin got most of that back, you know, with a certain amount of humility in Abu Dhabi. And now he's taking the rest of it, because not only is he the better sportsman, he would feel he's the better man because of what Conor said in the octagon afterwards, right? So he really is, you know, I mean, his sort of share price, if you like, is absolutely
his stock is up in the roof.
Oh yeah, it's mad, like, you know. And the Oliveira, yeah, good champion, that kind of thing, right? But I still believe that, you know, when, you know, thinking back, I still wanted Dustin to go for the title shot after the last fight against Conor, because I don't believe in this thing of money fights. I don't like it. Put the best people in there, let them fight for the title. You know, if that was me, I would have said Dustin Poirier has to fight you know, Michael Chandler or Oliveira, whoever it would be for the title fight then, you know. So, but that he's going to get the chance to do it now, I think he'll do very, very well in it. The one thing, as Ross was mentioned there, right, the really good grapplers, and especially those who have a wrestling background, they're so heavy on you. Even a guy at 155, right, the feeling them, you know, the Brazilians call it 1,000 kilos, right, because they just make you carry their weight and they really wear you out. Now, Oliveira is used to that. He's from Brazil. He's grappled with these guys, but it's different level with these guys with an American wrestling background, you know, who are big into that kind of scene. And Dustin's one of these guys who he's put in the rounds on the wrestling mat as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I honestly think that Poirier is one of these guys. He looks like he's gone to MMA University. You know, he's such a well-rounded fighter now. Yeah. He's in such a good place mentally and emotionally that I do think that he has all the tools to become the next lightweight champion, and probably, you know, easily by the end of the year if he wants to.
And again, he's also 8-1, I think, in his last 9 fights, with names like Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor twice on it, Dan Hooker. I think Eddie Alvarez on that list, and Anthony Pettis as well. Niall, can Charles Oliveira do anything against Dustin Poirier?
Yeah, I think both these lads are greatly underappreciated, and obviously I think Dustin's getting sort of some props now. You know, Charles is to a certain extent, but yeah, listen, man, Charles, people often forget how good his Muay Thai skills are in his stand-up. He's an excellent striker as well. And I just want to go back to the point in Dustin. I don't think he's really got the credit he's deserved after the fight at the weekend. You know, what he's done since that first meeting at UFC 178. I think, you know, going into the fight on Saturday night, I think it was Conor's 4th fight at lightweight, and Dustin had 14 within that time. And what he's done is he's just evolved, you know, mentally as well. I think, you know, he's overcome those hurdles. He's been in those title fights, and you know, he's been in those gunslinging battles with Eddie Alvarez. He's overcome every sort of challenge a mixed martial artist has had to face, and that's why he is so good. But listen, I think people are overlooking Charles here in this fight. I think if, as Phil said, you know, he gets you to the deck, you're in big trouble, and I do anticipate that he's going to get him to the deck at some point, and I don't think it's going to end well for Dustin. And as much as credit as I've just given Dustin, Charles deserves it as well, because he's an absolute savage on the deck.
That's a hot take from Noel McGrath there, Basmo.
Yeah, two former featherweights. And then, lads, obviously we're going to get into Conor. Like, we all presume that Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier are going to fight each other for the title this year. Touch wood, like, you know what I mean? The show has to keep rolling on. But Ross, obviously Conor's going to be out for a while. He got the surgery done, supposedly that's all right now. He's going to be on crutches for the next 6 weeks. What are you sort of expecting from Conor now?
I don't expect to see Conor back in the octagon this year. I think it'll maybe be sometime spring next year if he does return. And I think they're going to do the Nate Diaz trilogy next. I think Dustin Poirier will probably end up on a different trajectory than Conor McGregor will. And to be honest, I don't think it will go in Conor McGregor's favour to fight Dustin Poirier, who will remain active next. I think he's better off fighting someone like Nate Diaz, who tends to stay about as inactive as Conor does. And I think that's probably the fight to make next. That trilogy will do absolute gangbusters for the UFC. It's a great business call. And look, at some stage, UFC have to look at their ethics, even though Phil O'Connor will totally disagree with me on this. And they get like throwing Conor in for a title shot if Dustin Poirier is the champ is just farcical at this stage. You know what I mean? But look, crazier things have happened, but I think he should do the Diaz trilogy.
Phil, what about yourself?
I think on Saturday night was the last time we saw Conor the contender in the cage. I don't think we'll ever see him fight for a title again. I don't think we'll ever see him fight at lightweight again. I think we'll see him take on Nate Diaz, and they'll do a real, getting back to evil Conor, and throwing cans of Monster, one of which whistled over my head in Las Vegas at that press conference. I think that's what
you didn't get up and head it for the lads, no?
Yeah, no, I tried to fucking catch it. Free Monster.
He tried to get a lawsuit going.
That hit me.
But and Mullen can't pass him for a photo after.
If it was a can of Guinness, Niall would have caught it for me.
I would have drank it.
But I think that's the end of that. Like, I honestly don't think Conor will be 33 now. I think it's the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, Wednesday.
That he's going to be 33. So, like, you have to ask yourself, what does he want out of life at this point in time, right? I mean, if you're going to get back, because the lightweight division is and pretty much always has been a shark tank in the UFC. There in featherweight for me has always been, the hardest matchups, because they have knockout power and they're also quick, and it requires so much to stay at the top of your game there, and that's why so few people can do it with any sort of longevity. It's a little bit easier at the lower weight class and at the higher weight classes because you just got to hang in there. But I think that might be the end of that. I think that if he was to do that, Conor was at a fork in the road on Friday before this, and this is what I wrote in the preview, and he's still sitting at that fork in the road because he broke his fucking leg, right? And if he had won, he would have had a lightweight title fight and a boxing match against a real boxer, against a Manny Pacquiao or that kind of figure, Floyd Mayweather again or whatever. That didn't happen. He broke his ankle instead. So the other fork in that road for me is Nate Diaz too, and a fucking YouTuber or a social media influencer, and that kind of boxing match. They're the two things. Now, Conor, people talk about him having so much money and that kind of thing. Yeah, but it's very easy, for that sort of pile to go down, especially when you're in an expensive rehab process and you have a lot of people around you who are depending on you for their living, right? He can't just sack everybody and scale everything back. He won't want to do that, But so that's going to be like Floyd Mayweather, my kids can't eat legacy, and that's where he's going to find himself. And the soundest, most sensible thing for him to do is to take on Nate Diaz, who, let's face it, smokes a bit of the Baldy. He's not really in it anymore. He's in it for the money. He's not in it for titles. He's in it because he's an OG and he wants to be there. So fighting these social media influencers is the same thing. Conor should be able to pick them off, no bother. He shouldn't be in there with Floyd Mayweather, but he can box put him in there with both the fucking Paul brothers at the same time for me, and I'll definitely pay for that pay-per-view, But I think that the people around Conor now, and that includes Dana White, it includes Audi Attar, these people need to manage him properly, right? Not doing what he says he wants to do, but doing the right thing for him, right? And I have never met nor seen anybody in combat sports who knows what the right thing is for themselves. It has to come from outside. It has to be Dana saying, take this Diaz fight, we'll let you go box, come back, fight fucking GSP in a grappling match, do whatever you like. But this chapter, for now, it's over.
No.
I disagree. I think, and the reason why I disagree is, I totally agree with you, Phil. Like, these guys need people around them that are going to tell them to do the right things. Dana White doesn't do that. Dana White looks at his back pocket and sees how many, dollars, $100 bill notes there is there. I think if Dustin wins, what they're going to do is because of what's said, what the narrative's there. We saw the stupid interview, as I talked about earlier on, which I was very angry about when they put the microphone in Conor's face when he's lying on the octagon. Yeah, there are little bits of content the UFC can use to sell a future bout between these two. I think Conor said too much. I think if Dustin goes out and wins this fight against Charles Oliveira, they're going to look at next year, potentially July, in my opinion, and they're going to try and do that stadium show between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier in Las Vegas. That's the way I look at it. You know, Dana doesn't really care about his fighters, and I think they're going to try and milk every little penny they can out of Conor McGregor while he's still there. And I think that narrative with Dustin is obviously still there at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that next summer.
Just a point on that, Niall, right? The last fight and the only fight in the UFC that Conor has won at lightweight was against Eddie Alvarez in November 2016, right? In the meantime, how many fights he had? Like 4 fights since then?
4, and Dustin had 14, yeah.
Yeah, so this is exactly the opposite of what Dana White would have wanted for the UFC, right? Because remember, Conor was asking for equity. He wanted a share in the business and that kind of thing, and they couldn't make an agreement. So essentially what both of them have done is the antithesis of what you were saying there, right? Conor should have been in there 3 times a year, every fucking year, right? But, you know, just building that legacy. But he wasn't able to do it because everything else got in the way, right? Conor's not a fighter. He's not a guy with a beard and tattoos getting in there anymore. He's an industry, right? And I remember when I sat down when the Notorious documentary came out in 2017, I think it was in October, and I flew over to Dublin to interview him, and we sat down. We only talked about money, and he said to me, one of the things he said to me was, that was the time when he sort of admitted and apologized for being at Artem's fight and using homophobic slurs. And he said one thing to me that stuck out, and it struck me again this weekend, lads. He said, at the time he was only 28 or 29 or whatever, and he said, there's no handbook for doing this. And I went, yeah, you're probably right. And then I went on, hang on a fucking second. There is, right? Combat sports has existed for over a century. This is, you know, you have Bob Arum, you have all these guys who've been doing this for a long time. And they just haven't managed to fit Conor into that frame, into that sort of cookie cutter thing of making him into a fighter that they can promote, right? Now, even difficult people like Muhammad Ali went from being Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali to dealing with the Nation of Islam, changing his religion, rejecting the Vietnam War and doing all these things, and was still an absolute cash cow for the sport of boxing. He still managed to fight. Now, his career ended in terrible, terrible circumstances with the losses and the illnesses that he suffered afterwards, right? But they still made him lucrative. Whereas the UFC, to me, they have failed utterly with the absolute golden boy, the golden goose of the sport. And this is all they've managed? 4 fights in 5 years? That's all you could do? These people have no idea how to run a business, not only for the best of Conor McGregor, but for the best of themselves. They don't even know that at this stage. That's me not getting accreditation ever again, isn't it?
In fairness, I think Andrew McGahan...
We'll edit this part out, Phil.
I think Andrew McGahan touched on it last week. He was saying that throughout the whole pandemic, Conor said, you know, he'd fight X, Y, and Z. He was saying he'd fight Diego Sanchez, and then, you know, that all blew up, and then, you know, the Dana White and the UFC took their golden goose and tried to paint him in a bad light, saying he was looking for a fight with Diego Sanchez. But I think at that stage he was like, I'll fight anyone, just give me a fucking fight. And they wouldn't give it to him. They couldn't afford to pay Conor McGregor. Well, they say they couldn't afford to pay Conor McGregor with no crowds. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can come to the negotiation table and make that work. I mean, I'm sure you could get someone on board to do extra sponsorship for a Conor McGregor fight behind closed doors. Believe you me, if they really wanted to make it happen, they would have done something to make it happen. And I think his inactivity has probably hindered his performances as of late. 100%. And his inactivity has also, you know, hindered the UFC as well.
Definitely. I think that as well. You know, I think what you were saying, what Andrew said, you know, Dave effectively messed up, you know, the kind of athlete I think everyone wanted to see, you know, an active guy who's competing 3-4 times a year. And it's the reason, that is the reason why we're not getting the optimum Conor McGregor. And it's the UFC's fault, because they're not willing to pay the cash. They're not willing to play hardball. You know, they're so greedy. I think they even wanted a live gate for Conor McGregor. You know, we saw the 3,000 or 4,000 go in the second fight there in Abu Dhabi. So it just tells you what's going on with the organization at the moment. And, you know, as we were saying there, like, you know, and what Phil was saying in terms of, you know, the Diaz fight next, that fight can wait for a while. And that's why I feel strongly about, I don't think they should do it, but I feel strongly it's going to happen. The Poirier fight is because they look at Diaz and they go, we can do this anytime we want. Poirier, that's only a certain sort of time structure they can do that in. And I think they're going to try and fit it in next summer. But yeah, you effectively bang on what you said there in terms of, you know, him not being active enough, and we haven't seen the best, the most optimum Conor McGregor because of that.
You know what, Noel McGrath, you're after selling to me what's called Poirier McGregor next. Just that I thought about it, if he fights Diaz and then loses Diaz, well, like, they can't do Poirier, as opposed to they can do Poirier now, and if he loses that one, they can still do the Diaz fight. That the Diaz fight never goes away until they both retire. And in MMA, you can retire 4 times and still come back.
Yeah, they'd be 55 years old, like they'd be older than me in the octagon for, Nate Diaz against Conor McGregor, finally the trilogy, and we'll all be dead, But the thing about Conor, and one of the things you have to hand it to him, lads, is he did change the game in terms of the money he has made out of fighting, and he has changed the purses. He's changed everything. It's gone up. We saw now a pay-per-view card of the weekend where the bonuses were 75k because the UFC had to be seen to be doing something. They're getting so much criticism over fighter pay. But when people see Conor do this, John Jones sees what Conor is doing. Derek Lewis is not one of these guys to go after money. He says it doesn't matter who I fight, I'm getting paid the same amount of money anyway. Daniel Cormier, it was in Dana's ear going, hey, if this Conor boy's getting money, then I'm getting money. They didn't all get pay-per-view points. All the champions didn't get pay-per-view points before. As far as I know, they're getting them now, So Conor did change that. And this is partially why they haven't allowed Conor to fight, because when you start to pay him or give him what he wants, right, then of course John Jones is going to say, look, I'm one of the greatest of all time. I need to be paid as well. And they're not prepared to do that, right? And I keep going back to this. There's 2 things. One, that Dana White had his hand in Conor McGregor's pocket, and that makes it very hard to fight against Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match that has nothing to do with you, And the other thing is that the richest man in mixed martial arts is Dana White, and he's never taken a punch in his life, And this is the problem with the UFC, is that they have these blinkers on, and they the only thing they care about is what's best for the UFC, not what's best for the fighters, and certainly not what's best for the sport of MMA. And this is why things like the Ali Act, where you separate the promoter from the agent, these things have to happen if this sport is going to properly join the mainstream and really look after the people who take part in it.
And I suppose the other thing on that is that anytime there's a McGregor pay-per-view as well, they can't actually put a title fight on the card as well, even if they want to do a main event, because the champion now gets pay-per-view points. They don't want to pay out Davison Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno now, or they don't want to pay out Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, any of these guys, Volkanovski, big money when they don't have to. And when Conor McGregor fights on pay-per-view, it's like, you're never getting a title fight on that card. Even if McGregor was champ, you wouldn't even get one now.
There used to be a time when everybody wanted to be in a Conor McGregor card. I remember speaking to I won't name any fighters who've told me these things because I haven't cleared it with them. I remember one fighter saying to me, there was a time when we all wanted to be in a Conor McGregor fight, but now there's so little money offered for those bout agreements. But they go, oh, you're on a Conor McGregor card, and the fighters are going, you know what? No, they still punch me as hard in the fucking face when I get in there. So I may as well get an extra 5 or 10 grand on a different card.
T Wood was actually famous for saying it. He was like, it's great. I get loads of extra money and I have to do less media.
Yeah,
that's true actually.
I just want to say
all the interviews.
I just want to say, obviously all the options there are good. I just want to give a curveball, but after Ross and Niall agreeing on that it's going to be Poirier, I was thinking maybe there was an outside chance he could do a boxing, because obviously the ankle, if you get he's going to have to sort of watch that for a bit. But I think he's sitting in the hospital now, being like, you know what, everyone's fucking against me. I'm coming back. I'm going to show them all. That's and I don't think going into a boxing match against Floyd, Pacquiao, or Jake, or Logan Paul, or KSI, or me, calling you out. No, I'm joking. That's not making anyone happy. Everyone wants to see this trilogy finalized.
Quadrigy or
Quadrigy,
whatever you want to call it. Question for Niall and Phil, just because you might have your ear close to the ground than we do. Just in terms of replacements for this fight, Max Holloway was pulled from the Yair Rodriguez fight, and then he went over to be the replacement for this fight. But we were told he was injured for the Yair Rodriguez fight. And then we also heard that, we saw that RDA was also the replacement fight. He weighed in for this fight. What did you guys hear on that?
Well, I heard it was RDA straight up.
Okay.
I don't know I didn't hear anything about Max. I heard
but he declared it himself
that he was injured. Yeah, he said So yeah, I don't know. I think the RDA one has sort of fresher. It's it's another narrative there that's I think we forgot about until the confrontation we saw in UFC embedded between the parents on Saturday, or was it Friday evening? I think it was. So that's another one they could potentially do down the line. But I think we need to get back. That injury as well. That's
serious.
It's a very, very serious injury. It takes a lot of time to heal as well. I think I was reading today. I think between 12 and 54 weeks is sort of the return time. So no sort of running or walking till after 3 months. So listen, we don't even know. There could be serious ramifications for that. It could be a lot longer than expected. I'd look at as you said, probably spring minimum of next year before he gets back in there. And yeah, it's just I just think we need to be mindful of that as well about the injury, because that as I said, you know, it's a very, very delicate part bone. I think it was the shin bone. Is it the tibia?
Tibia.
There was
roll the dice.
Whichever one.
The only thing is when he does announce his return, and it is inevitable, he will come back at some stage. I firmly do believe he does. And when he's announced against whoever he's announced against, there'll all be that glimmer of hope within every Irishman that he's going to go back in there and get the job done and land one of those big left hands. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is the first time where I saw the press conference and I was like, I'm not as convinced. Normally leading up to every single fight, even the Khabib fight, I'm like, I'm convinced he's going to do it. He's convinced me. And this was the only one where I'm like, I don't know, like even though it was the exact same amount of time between Diaz 1 and Diaz 2, I was like, this one's slightly different. I don't know why, but it just was. But look,
maybe it was the way you were so quiet. Didn't give you the reassurance.
Yeah,
it was like the Ronda Rousey. It was a bit like Ronda Rousey in a way.
Yeah, I think there was more vibes to that. But look, at the end of the day, he got in there. He gave a decent show of himself all the time. Like, it wasn't like you know, it was the most one-sided affair I've ever seen. But look, at the end of the day, best luck to him on his rehab and his injury, and hopefully we get to see him again sometime soon, because I think we all do forget sometimes how much he's made this sport a global phenomenon and how much he's actually added to that. And I think the day he does leave his gloves down in the octagon and he does retire, you know what I mean, we'll almost take for granted how much we enjoyed the Conor McGregor era. And it's one of the greatest sporting stories of all time. I remember, well, it was actually after the Ivan Bunsinger fight, but I remember him being on Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour and saying, you know, he didn't have a pot to piss in, eating his blueberries. And I remember him, you know, showing up the Fight Island on a yacht. You know what I mean? Like, these are two parallel universes that, and he made it all for himself. He made himself an absolute global icon. And I was talking to a guy from India today, which is very random, on Spotify Green Rooms, which is like that new app that Pizzi and Ariel are on. And I was actually, it's mad to see how much people in other countries idolize him as an icon as well. You know what I mean? In Ireland, his stock is like probably lowered a bit, but like, you see the guys in the States and them coming out of that restaurant, and you know what I mean? It was like One Direction came out to a bunch of 15-year-olds. It was next level. So he is an absolute global icon. Whether you love him or hate him, by God, do you watch him?
Yeah, Phil, any last words on that?
Yeah, no, last night, lads, there's a Swedish soccer player called Robin Quaison who played in the European Championships there, and he's from near me. And last night he'd organised a big screen outdoors for the kids. He's done it for a few of the games, you know. And a friend of his got on to me and said, "Oh, Robin's up there, come up and say hello," you know. So I went up and I was talking to him, and this is what happens. I live in a suburb where there's a lot of Swedish people, a lot of immigrants, right? And as soon as I show up in these contexts, right, everybody wants to talk about Conor still, right? So even if you can walk down the street in Ireland, you know, Pizzi was telling me the people didn't know the fight was on. Everybody wanted to know about what happened to him. Would he be back? Who's he going to fight? They had exactly the same conversation that we've had for the last hour or so, you know. So he still is that global icon. And I mean, to be honest, you know, for all the headlines about him, for all this thing of, you know, punching people in pubs and the allegations that have made against him, the one thing I want to see for the man is for him to find happiness. Whether he's the millionaire or billionaire that he wants to be, or whether he's living in a 2-up, 2-down house in Crumlin again, I don't care. I just want him to be able to be at peace with himself and to say, I did that. I went there and I changed that entire sport, and the whole world knew my name. And I hope that the people around him, including the UFC, including his management, including all the people who train and spar and fight with and against him, that they can see that and they help him to do that, because I really think that, you know, for the joy that he's given people, that he deserves it. You know, as I say, there's all that other stuff that needs to be dealt with as well. But that's all I'd wish for any sports person at the end of the day, that when they do come and lay down their gloves in the octagon, as you said there, Ross, that they're at peace with themselves.
No,
that's very touching sentiment.
It was, yeah.
I'm well up here, man.
No, what about yourself?
No, I agree, and I just think as well, you know, maybe we have to ask ourselves that question. You know, is he done? Should he walk away from the sport now? As Phil said, would he find more happiness in there? Because everything does feel a little bit forced, as I said, over the last sort of couple of fight camps. So, listen, there's no shame in that as well, to walk away from the sport, and maybe he might have to after this injury. We still don't know how this rehab is going to go, but yeah, listen, you know, I've been there since the beginning, and it's been some ride, and I think, you know, even if he walked away now, we'd have some of the best memories I think we've ever had. Myself and Pizza used to always say, like the Aldo, the Mendez fight, they were like the Italian 90 days.
Yeah.
They were really, really special times. And, you know, I just don't get that anymore. I don't get that same buzz, unfortunately. And I think that is reflected in Conor's performances as of late. And listen, as I said, you know, I'd be happy for him to walk away now if he wants to do that. But as Phil says, as long as he's happy, he finds peace. That's the main thing. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, well, like I think it's needless to say, we don't want him to be in the last fight, because like Conor feeds everyone, whether it be like people posting selfies with him, people posting videos about him, etc., podcasts,
he brings the numbers one way or the other.
Brings the numbers. He just brings excitement. Full stop. He's just one of the most exciting people in the world, and look, all the superstars come out to do it, and they don't come out for anything. But if it is the last fight, like, I mean, we've had some crack, and I'm sure everyone will raise a glass of proper 12, but I can't see it being the end. He's only 33 now on Wednesday. The only reason why I know it off by heart is the same birthday as my mum's, but I mean, I think it will continue. I'd say he's getting ready to get. I say he's doing some sort of sit-ups now on the bed right now. You know him, but
no, I agree. But you know, I wouldn't be sad if he called it a day. But
I agree.
I think he is going to continue on. I think that burning desire is still there, but whether he can, you know, match what he did in the past, I'm not so sure.
He seems like a man who wants to go out on his own terms one way or the other.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, let us know down in the comments what you think as well, guys. But here, there is also other fights on the card, lads. I'm not sure if you have the card up, but I was wondering if, okay, I'm going to ask each of us to give one shout out or one fight or fighter on the card that really impressed you and you want to talk about. So, Phil, I think it's your time to talk. You're dying to go there.
Oh, the one who didn't impress me, I have to say, was Sean O'Malley. That lad Moutinho. Was it Moutinho that he met there in that first fight?
The human punching bag.
Unbelievable. Like, you know what they call him, the green zombie. You know, like that kid was just amazing. Imagine taking that fight on 2 weeks' notice against, you know, the guy that the UFC, the golden boy that the UFC are trying to build, and he goes in and builds that. I'll tell you, lads, I'm gonna be front row center for his next fight. It doesn't matter where it is. I want to see that guy fight somebody on his own level, you know, so that he can get in there.
His corner should have stopped that fight, though, and that's another thing I need. You know, that it got uncomfortable, I think, after that second round in that fight, because he was just eating shot after shot after shot.
Great blocking with the face, though, Niall, no?
He was just walking into Everton, taking Everton, and, you know,
lack of head movement, one might say.
That's but it's a big stigma in the sport. You know, you know, the corner should stop the fight there in the second round. I think Dana mentioned after, I think I tweeted about it. It gets to a point now where when are we going to actually sort of accept that it's okay to stop a fight when a guy's getting his head poked off? You know, we saw what Anthony Smith a number of months ago, where he's handing the referee his fucking teeth. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just
and maybe Calvin Catter against Max Holloway as well.
Yeah,
that was up in that.
Listen,
what are you achieving at this stage?
Exactly. What are you achieving?
Like, you know, but
all credit to him, but it
kind of comes down to the referee as well, Donald, because, like, you know, in that situation, they're there to protect you from yourself. You know, like, you know, much. And all Ross, as he was defending himself well, but his face, it's not intelligent defense, right? So I give him that. I know, you know, I'm sort of joking about that, but I really did enjoy the kid's go forward sort of mentality. That thing, he actually looked like he had a brush handle up his back because his head was just stuck. It never moved.
Like he'd a rocket up his arse, to be honest. Exactly, he was going forward so much.
So that's the thing.
He also knew this was the biggest platform he was ever going to get as well. You know, he's.
You know what? One thing I will say is, I think we learned nothing about Sean O'Malley throughout the fight. We all know he has an absolute array of arsenal strikes. We all know he's accurate. I think he set a lot of records, but, like, I don't know if you can, like, applaud him for those records, considering, like, Moutinho almost, like, went out of his way to make sure each strike landed. I think he landed actually a record amount of strikes, or it was a record percentage of strikes and a record amount of strikes in bantamweight division. It was almost strange, the stoppage as well, because he wasn't, like, fully rocked. Well, it was hard to tell whether that guy was rocked with the amount of shots he was eating. He just seemed to keep going forward, and I was a bit like, I was almost confused by the stoppages. Like, why now, Herb? If you know what I mean, as in, like, why not 2 minutes go? Why not 3 minutes go? Why not a round ago? But again, like, I found it was obviously a tough decision for Herb Dean as well, because this guy was a zombie. He was going to keep on coming forward, and, like, I think enough was enough. And maybe Herb Dean backed, like, Sean O'Malley by knockout and was like, you know what, I need my money now, so we'll call it a night for Moutinho here. But it was definitely his stock definitely didn't go down, Sean O'Malley. But in my opinion, I don't know any more about him than I did before.
No, what about yourself? Any fighter?
Yeah, I think former cage warrior. His performance against Ryan Hall was absolutely phenomenal. That's Ilya Poirier. This guy just looks like I'm getting really excited about seeing this kid over the last couple of years. And I think that's 11-0. So good on the feet. And just to handle a guy like Ryan Hall in such dominant fashion was just absolutely insane. And this kid is going places. There's a real buzz, I think, around Georgian mixed martial arts at the moment. And I was talking to someone about this the other day. It's strange, obviously those guys over that side of the pond, that side of the world, are traditionally known for their grappling and stuff like that. But there's a whole host of guys who are really strong kickboxers and good in the feet coming from that area. So he's a guy I think we really need to keep our eyes on in the next couple of years, because phenomenal performance against a guy like Ryan Hall, as I said.
Another man who wasn't too great with a striking defense on this occasion, Ryan Hall. Very much hands down. But yeah, no, great performance. And I might butcher his name, but is it Kaladze is going to fight Barboza in the main event soon? Cheeky.
Georgian?
Yeah, another Georgian.
Countryman. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he's
against Barboza.
And he's undefeated as well, isn't he? So, I think he is anyway. So these Georgians are coming in thick and fast. So it will be very, very interesting to see. I actually just want to say in the co-main event, Gilbert Burns, I actually thought it was a great performance by him. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the best fight. It didn't get me up off my seat, but it was good to see that he is an elite welterweight. Because I was I'm not going to say a question. I knew he was very, very good, but I was wondering how good was he? Because he sort of beat Damian Maia. You know what I mean? If you can nullify Damian Maia's jiu-jitsu, which obviously Burns can with his jiu-jitsu, I fancy Burns on the feet. And I think it was the same with Gunnar Nelson. He was the heavier hitter between himself and Gunnar Nelson. Then he sort of got the Usman fight, lost to Usman. I was like, how good is Gilbert Burns at welterweight? It was sort of an unknown commodity. And see him in there, execute his game plan against Wonderboy. I thought it was great. I was actually laughing. I was speaking to someone during the week because someone goes to me, yeah, but did you see Gilbert Burns got your man into MMA Wonderboy? I go, Raymond Daniels. I go, I think every single person in the world has got Raymond Daniels into MMA Wonderboy. And I think DC alluded to it on the broadcast as well. Yeah. But look, he got a decision win over Wonderboy. Wonderboy is a tough puzzle to solve. And, he's established himself as a top welterweight contender. So shout out to Gilbert Burns.
Mention how they were in the headlock. I think we did that off air, but you have to mention it.
I was a bit perplexed that people, people were sort of bored by that fight because, for him to get the job done, he did exactly what he had to do. So, that's the way I was expecting the fight to go. 9 times out of 10, if he stands up Wonderboy, he's losing the fight.
I think they were just dying for the main event, Well,
put it this way, I'm never bored by it. I love a chess match. The more sort of a strategic game plan for me, the better. But people weren't impressed in the Twitter world. But it's not really the best gauge of where you should be getting your views from. But like I said, when someone can nullify Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, it's very, very interesting. And yes, there was a bit of a schoolboy headlock at one stage with a few punches. But sure, look, you know what I mean? That's the wild thing about mixed martial arts. You actually never know what you're going to get. And you also get something next to new every weekend as well.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out as well to Taitu Vasa for knocking out Greg Hardy and doing the shoey after. And he kept doing shoeys on the way out for people in the seat. And I think someone put that Dustin Poirier hot sauce in one. So because he did it, it was all red. Yeah. I was like, that fella deserved to get knocked out as well. But lads, overall, okay, lads, overall, what would you give a rating of this? And then I just want to mention a couple of things about this week's events going down. What would you rate the card overall, Ross?
Probably give it a 7 out of 10. Look, I was entertained. To Poirier, like Sean O'Malley was entertained one way or the other with Matinho's lack of head movement. I was interested in the Gilbert Burns, but it's hard to give it any more than that with the way the main event ended. If the main event ended in any way of decisive finish or went the distance, I'd probably give an 8.5 out of 10, but I'm in around the 7 mark, I'd say.
Phil?
Yeah. Usually when I have to write about a card, I'll go to bed and I get up for the main card. But this time, because the Copa America was on, I just stayed up all night, and I had the 2 screens going and that. And it actually turned out to be an awful lot better than I expected. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I'm going to sneak ahead of Ross there just a little bit, So
he's a bit more generous than me.
Yeah, just feeling generous this evening after England losing, So, but it was just entertaining the whole way through, even the chess matches and that kind of thing. I just found the whole thing really entertaining.
I'm gonna go one better than you, Phil. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Oh, get in there!
I did. I enjoyed it right from the get-go. I think, you look at Zhumagulov, I think it was, Jaglash Zhumagulov in the first fight. That standing guillotine was fantastic, and it sort of set the tone for the rest of the night. And again, someone actually forgot to mention, I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. Dricus Duplessis, what a talent that guy is. He's going places.
Never seen the scorecards, no, that fella.
Yeah, seen it from KSW, all the way over. His second UFC fight, his second finish. Then we'd Michel Pereira and Nico Price, another fantastic fight. I really enjoyed that one. Two boys swanging for the hills. And then we'd Carlos Condit as well, obviously come up short against Max Griffin. Yeah, bar the main event. I think it was a really, really decent card. And as you said, I really enjoyed Gilbert Burns and Thompson as well. I know everyone didn't really enjoy it for some unknown reason, but I enjoyed it, definitely.
Lack of understanding. No,
if Tai Tuivasa comes and fights in UFC Dublin, will you do a shoey off with him with a Guinness?
No, I wouldn't put a Guinness near a shoe. That's disrespectful to my beautiful drink of choice.
Only on draft, not out of a can.
I'll put the shoe over his head.
Lads, overall, I'd give it a 7.5. I can't go higher than that, just because like Conor losing, I going to bed that morning was terrible. But like whatever way you want to look at that card, the show continues. There's more MMA this week. There is Bellator this Friday. It's being headlined by Juliana Velasquez versus Denise Kielholtz. That's Bellator 262. And then also on Saturday, the UFC is back. It's being headlined by Islam Makhachev against Thiago Moises. Misha Tate returns. Jeremy Stevens on the card. Rodolfo Vieira is on the card. And shout out to Billy Quarantillo. But lads, Islam Makhachev take on Thiago Moises in the lightweight division. Makhachev is being everyone's saying no one wants to fight him. Ross, which way do you see this going on Saturday?
I really think Islam will win. I don't think he'll have it completely his own way. Thiago Moises is he's probably an underrated fighter in the lightweight division, to say the least. But I rate Islam easily in the top 5 in this division. I think he's an absolute monster in the grappling. People say, just sheer grappling him versus Khabib, he can really hold his own against Khabib. So, look, I'm going to say that Islam wins and decision.
Phil, what about yourself? What do you make of that? How far do you think Islam can go in this division?
It's exactly as Ross was saying. I think he can go a long way on that grappling style, because as yet nobody has really cracked the code, right? If Khabib was to come back tomorrow, we're still in the same place as we were when he retired. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see if I don't think this fight is on a level whereby that's going to be dealt with. I just don't think so. I think Makhachev is going to win that one, and it's going to be interesting because then his name is going to start to turn up in discussions as well. Going, okay, he's not going to be in a title shot straight away, but he's going to be coming into that kind of thing. We've had this. Chandler's been there, Hooker's been there, Oliveira's been there, Poirier's there. So he's going to be in thereabouts. So, okay, who can we throw into the mix to make this interesting? And it would be fascinating if we were to get a sort of a Khabib 2.0 and see, has anybody actually learned anything in the last 5 years?
No, we'll leave it with you.
Yeah, I think this guy is the real deal. And started out slow in his UFC tenure. We didn't really get the performances we were expecting in his first couple of fights, but the last couple, he's really come in. That performance against Drew Dober was sensational. I think he's way too much for Thiago Moises, and Moises, I don't think has ever faced a guy like Islam Makhachev in terms of his grappling. I think Islam Makhachev, in the next 12 to 18 months is, going to be knocking on the door for a world title shot. Submission with inside 2 rounds for me on Saturday night. And yeah, he is that good. And I was speaking to Javier Mendez, his coach, recently, and Javier said, he basically backed that up, that he said, he is more talent than Khabib Nurmagomedov, and that's a scary thought for anyone. And I think we're seeing it slowly but surely turn into that. So yeah,
I think this is his last time fighting someone who doesn't have a big name and who isn't a top contender. Like you alluded to at the start, Barry, people will get the contract slid across them with Islam Makhachev's name on it, and then their leg starts to hurt. Oh no! I can't fight that weekend. The next weekend against anyone else is fine. People don't want to fight this guy, and again, especially a 5-rounder is probably even worse against him, I think. So like Noah said, I think he'll get the job done. Thiago Moises, I like, it's sort of a funny one because like you sort of just want to say something nice about him, but when you're dealing with Islam Makhachev, It's a whole other ball game.
Exactly. Lads, that basically wraps up the whole entire show. Niall and Phil, we want to give you both the chance to give a shout out to whoever or plug in whatever you're doing. And so Phil, you may as well go ahead first.
Oh God. Just follow at Philip O'Connor on Twitter. I'm going to be off at the Tokyo Olympics doing all sorts of weird things. It's going to be a weird Olympics this time. So follow me on there, and we'll see how it goes for us. And I also want to give a shout out to a young up and coming MMA journalist at Niall McGrath 4 on Twitter. Really good follow there, lads. I mean, I get all my information. All his opinions are basically mine, but I tend to say them first before he has a chance.
There you go. If Phil summed it up perfectly.
Yeah. And get over to Talking Brawls as well. Niall's doing some good stuff over on YouTube there. Niall's one of the OGs in the Irish media game. So Niall, Phil, absolute legends. We love your work. We love to have you on. And we'll definitely have you on again. I think me and Barry have decided that going forward for all UFC pay-per-views, we're going to do probably previews and then post-fight shows. So who knows? We might be hitting you up for UFC 265, the UFC interim heavyweight title between Cyril Gane and Derek Lewis, the fight that everyone's been waiting for.
Yeah. And if you are new to the show, make sure to like. If you're on Spotify, make sure to hit follow. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a comment. Make sure to follow the boys. And as always,
stay energized.
Energized show, up the Irish. Been sussing you guys a couple of times. I've seen a couple of clips. I think you've done some interviews with Dylan Moran and that I saw. So keep going. Keep up the good work, guys.